defective assassin gets cornered in an alley and his ass gets brutally killed. Hegon, now known as Joe Logan, is a former assassin. He's cleaning his bike when his son, Ren, joins him. They share a laugh, and his wife, Mari, also a former assassin, joins them too. The entire family is happy until Mari notices news of the assassin's death. She's scared that they'll be caught, but Joe reassures her. From then on, he becomes extra careful, cleaning door handles and shit. It's Ren's birthday soon enough, and they celebrate it the best they can, with cake and laughs. Too bad they killed for Japan and not for money. Unfortunately, they also get attacked that night. Joe kills off as many assassins as he can, but gets struck in the neck. He still struggles up the stairs, only to witness their leader pierce his wife's throat as she holds their son's corpse.
She sure put up a good fight.
Joe then gets stabbed in the chest and left for dead when the police arrive. Somehow, he pulls a Frankenstein and awakens in the morgue 24 hours later. He then gets taken to the hospital, where FBI agents Mike Morris and Emma Samanda question him to no avail. Later on, Emma watches as he sits on the rooftop and suddenly rolls out of his seat when needles fall from the sky. He uses all of his rage to take down the assassins, and you bet he had a lot of it. Dude even applies a secret technique that fills everywhere with smoke, after which he beheads 8 assassins at once. Emma rushes to the scene, but he knocks her out and continues his mass slaughtering. He then pushes the assassins into the elevator and kills them all before they reach the ground floor. He continues his killing spree until Agent Morris sees him in action. Joe finally comes face to face with their leader, and they clash weapons until he stabs him multiple times. He then reveals his true face just to knock the bastard out. Afterwards, he visits his family in the morgue and heads to their home to break out his assassin gear. He then sets the house ablaze and puts on the mask of destruction. Joe wakes up from a nightmare and slumps to the ground as he tries to approach the leader he tied upside down. Luckily, Dr. Kagari comes by to help him. He later reveals that Joe used the secret art of Stark awareness and tells him never to do it again. The doctor proceeds to help him, and Joe passes out. He wakes up with bandages all over and heads straight to the leader, stabbing him day after day like a sweet, twisted psycho. Finally, he sets him ablaze. Meanwhile, Agent Morris tries to question his boss about the mass murder, but gets shut down blatantly. He then approaches Emma about it, and she reveals that Joe and his family don't exist. Joe packs up his things and hits the road with his dirt bike, searching every nook, cranny, and ruin he can. He beats up 2 police officers at a bar, and this reminds him of Agent Morris. He calls the agent the next day, and they decide to meet up at a Chinese restaurant, making all of Emma's efforts to trace the call end in futility. That night, the agent kicks out the owner when our boy arrives, and a few minutes into their conversation, he pulls a gun on Joe in a laughable attempt to arrest him. An assassin, dressed up as an Azua delivery man, then interrupts them as he begins to attack Joe. Things get so intense that Morris almost gets killed. Luckily, Joe pushes him out of harm's way. He then uses his secret arts to even the playing field, and suddenly, 1 assassin becomes 2. Joe distracts them with a massive flame, beheads one of them, and nails the other to the wall with 3 knives. He reveals to Morris that he's a ninja, and just when they think they're safe, bullets begin to fly towards them. Soon enough, the restaurant gets bombed, but when the dust settles, Morris can't find Joe. News later reaches Yamaji, the leader of the assassins, that Joe survived. An Ayuza affiliate named Lil kills a European politician and blows up his car. He then laughs maniacally as he licks a picture of Joe. For some reason, he wants to have his way him. He meets up with Yamaji and gets updated on everything that has been going on with Joe. He then asks about Zai, and apparently Zai is busy killing off another defective assassin.
To join me.
Yamaji then declares that he gave the Reaper instructions to stay clear of Joe. Meanwhile, Agent Morris gets told that the restaurant was a front for laundering money, and the cover-up infuriates him. His boss calls him aside and cancels him, just like R. Kelly's music. The stubborn agent heads straight to Joe instead, and both men realize that Yuza is connected to the ninjas that attacked them. They share a drink to mark their new partnership, and later meet up with Emma at an abandoned parking lot. After some chit-chat, they get into her car, which turns out to be one big computer. She then explains that Uza is a multinational enterprise company with a hand in every technological pot in the world. Apparently, they also kill off anyone who's inconvenient to them. Reminds me of the United States. The European politician that died had banned foreign technology, but his replacement did the opposite and formed an alliance with Uza. It becomes apparent that the company uses ninjas to kill off their opponents. Joseph celebrates with his team over the Auza reactor and heads upstairs to meet Yamaji waiting for him. He reveals that the shooters at the restaurant were his men, and Yamaji warns him never to do it again. On the flip, Emma locates Auza headquarters, but their meeting is interrupted when a robot assassin stabs the top of the car. Unfortunately, the struggle continues until Emma's car gets hit by Truck-kun.
Huh?
Joe then exits to continue battling Terminator and fights against its tentacles soon enough. He ends up stabbing his face and ripping out the camera on his chest to signal that he'll kill whoever's on the other side. Later on, as the police care for Morris, Joe gets a call.
Now we can finally talk.
The caller promises to help Joe get into Uza City and only reveals that he's also a defective assassin. In turn, Joe meets up with Emma and Morris at the hospital, and they discuss this new connect. Emma then presents a dark website and announces that the leader knows a lot about Uza. Morris plans to check it out alone, but Emma refuses to let him hog the glory. The top dogs, too lazy to list their names, have a meeting where they marvel at Joe's ability to defeat the Terminator. They all agree that he's coming to Uza City, and down the line, Yamaji literally takes Lil's breath away and tells everyone that they have to know Joe's secret art before they can take him down. You see, Higan, Mari, and Zai were names given to Joe and his colleagues when they became shinobi. They were each taught a secret art, and they made a pact to always risk their lives together. Comprende? Okay. Mari got shot multiple times on one of their missions. So Joe took her and broke out through the window. He swam to shore and resuscitated her, even bandaged her up while they hid in a cave. She tried to kill herself for fear of breaking the code, but Joe caught the knife and confessed his feelings soon enough. Zai later found them shivering and regrets letting them go till this day. Agent Morris and Emma drive out together while Joe waits for their connect. He gets a phone call and an elaborate explanation on how Uza City security works. Apparently, Joe will have to enter through the underground facility and has only 5 seconds to cross the electromagnetic barrier. Jason Cardenas is Morris's target, and he goes after him soon enough. Meanwhile, Joe goes underground as the Connect directs him. Unfortunately, a drop of his sweat gets caught in the laser sensors and alerts security. He manages to kill his way through, but when he reaches the barrier, Zai pushes him back. It really be your own. Connect then alerts him that it's a trap, but our boy has decided that Yamaji and everyone else must pay. After Morris meets up with Cardenas, he moves aside a game console, revealing a secret compartment. Meanwhile, a parade begins in Auza City, and Joe slips in through the sewers as the top dogs watch him. Top Humans just doesn't have the same ring to it. Morris visits Cardenas' lair and convinces him to hack into Auza for information. While he does this, Joe is busy killing his way through a myriad of assassins, like it's just another Tuesday at work. Cardenas gains access to the technical development server, but it's a dead end. They continue sifting through until they find a file called Bound containing social security numbers of a bunch of people. By the time Morris discovers Emma's name on the list, UZA operatives already close in on them. He then distracts them and manages to escape via his car. Joe finally escapes the sewers, but is welcomed by gunmen with automatic weapons. Thanks to his smoke bombs, he gains the upper hand. Meanwhile, Morris and Cardenas get chased down, and it becomes a shootout soon enough. They lose one of the cars to Truck Kun, and Morris shoots the remaining assailants chasing them. Joe appears in a parking lot to meet 4 assailants in overpowered robot suits called Gusoku gear. He then sees Yamaji flying up ahead and tries to reach him. Unfortunately, the robots beat his ass up. He distracts them with his secret art and makes a beeline for Yamaji's plane. Once again, he gets shot to the ground. Take a hint, dude. He activates his secret art of Stark awareness and faces the geared ninjas head-on. He then releases a smoke bomb as he stabs the crevices of these suits. As he's about to use another secret art, he gets hit and then knocked around like your mom. Zai arrives at that moment, but our boy's hatred for Yamaji keeps him trying. As Zai peels out his sword to behead Joe, one of the ninjas suddenly blocks it, stuns the others, and jumps off the building with Joe as she sets off an explosion. Meanwhile, Cardenas trudges an injured Morris out of harm's way. Yamaji spreads the word to all the ninjas in Oza City that Emma betrayed them and took Joe with her. He then gives instructions for their immediate death. Meanwhile, our boy wakes up in a pool of medical nanobots, and Emma reveals herself to him. Apparently, she was sent to know his secret arts, but betrayed them for personal reasons. She also stole a Gusoku gear for Joe, seeing as he can't defeat the lieutenants by himself. She declares that it's made specifically to work with ninja techniques and promises to finish it so it can become a new body for Joe. On the outside, operatives search for them in futility. Morris finally wakes up after 10 days of being under and acknowledges that he and Cardenas were chased because they came close to the truth. Meanwhile, Emma laments about Joe's suit lacking a reactor to power it and admits that they'll die if they try to get one from HQ. Word gets to Yamaji about the last unchecked area, but Big D offers to check it out himself. Never mind the controversial name, he just happens to be black.
Anita Max win.
Emma calls the suit Kamui and explains that it's light years above the others because it responds to the user's actions immediately. The downside is that Joe will have to be put into a deep sleep to sync it with his brain. She then reveals that she saved him on the night his family was killed by blocking his pathways. This angers Joe, but she knocks him out to sync with Kamui soon enough. Just then, Big D arrives and tears down the door with his mighty rod, with his laser. Anyway, he gets caught in a bomb trap. Lil, on the other hand, tears open the roof, much to Emma's surprise. He explains that he found them by noticing the only truck that has been moving around town since they escaped. You won't believe that this little dude came alone. Emma manages to throw him off the roof, and they both power up to fight. Morris plans to locate the people on the list and remembers that Emma's car is practically a computer. Lil and Emma fight it out, and she calls forth Truck Kun and his boys to attack him. He easily stops them and doles out multiple fire attacks. In turn, Emma controls his optics and makes him see clones of herself. He defeats all of them in a massive attack and stops Emma from powering up her suit. As he's knocking her around, she plays a pre-recording into Joe's subconscious, explaining how his wife had saved her life. She reveals that he was the only one she could save that night, and this pushes our boy to sync faster with Kamui. Just then, all the lights go out, and Joe appears in full glory. Joe fights it out with Lil until he achieves unimaginable speed. Lil then lets out a mighty flame, but our boy bolts through it until he stabs Lil in the chest. The cyborg tries to commit suicide, but Joe saves him, only to send his head to Joseph and Yamaji. Joe's last name should be Savage, just because. Joseph talks about bribing Joe, but Yamaji says it's pointless and adds that their great plan takes priority. Emma thinks they'll give them a break until they find a sure way to defeat him. Meanwhile, Yamaji finally gives Zai the go-ahead to kill Joe.
I shall stop you no longer. Go and end him.
Emma's face was marred in an accident, so her parents abandoned her. She ultimately got adopted by the organization and became a ninja under Mari. Mari had seen her real face and called it beautiful. She later taught Emma her secret art. Soon enough, the radical changes began and Yamaji taught foreigners the ways of shinobi. Emma had spoken to Mari about it, hoping that she would be chief one day, only to discover that Mari planned to leave because she was pregnant. Yeah, she chose the rod and the child. Get it? The chief died, and immediately after his cremation, Yamaji announced that ninja will abandon Japan for a greater power. He even killed 2 people who stood up to him. A sect then came together to plan their escape, so Mari handed their leader the technology to change their appearance. Later on, Mari and Emma fought it out. Emma had the chance to kill Mari, but she couldn't, so she chose to stab herself instead. Mari caught the knife, as she called Emma a part of her family. After sharing a beautiful moment, Emma decided to stay back, and so they continued to keep in touch, even after Ren was born. Emma then tells Joe that Yamaji is executing his master plan as they speak.
The Alza reactors. Our newly discovered fuel source, cuborium, can produce unlimited heat via fusion reaction.
Joseph pitches the Uza reactor, which can resupply power wirelessly to the secretary, and shows him the multiple government officials that have signed on. He then presents him with papers to sign, and this dude can tell that he'll die if he doesn't sign. Emma notices that Yamaji is nothing but a slave to Uza and claims that she was destined to work with Joe. She later shuts down Uza temporarily as Joe drives their truck out of the city. They head for the unfinished power plant to get Joe a portable power source. She then mentions that some lieutenants will be there for an operational test. True to Emma's words, Dilly defeats multiple soldiers for the defense secretary to see. On the flip side, she infiltrates the unfinished plant and gets a portable power source. Unfortunately, Big D blocks her exit and attacks her with his centipedes. Kamui comes to her rescue and gets the shit electrocuted out of him. Emma tries to shut down the reactor as Joe and Big D continue to fight it out, but she's attacked by one of Big D's centipedes. She maneuvers her way until she can shoot one of the canisters, taking out the centipede and part of the reactor. Unfortunately, it crumbles the ground beneath her and sweeps her off her feet. It's not so romantic until Joe saves her, but both his suit and that of Big D powers down. Later on, Joe patches Emma up and she notices that someone booted her computer. Morris and Cardenas try using her computer, but he realizes that it's too complex. Just then, a song plays on the radio and it reminds Morris of all the good times he and Emma shared. Well, more of the time he was drunk and singing it, but let's not concentrate on the past. They later creep up on Morris and reveal everything to him. He feels betrayed, so he stomps out and steps on a bunch of firecrackers, leaving Emma to patch him up as they finally make up. The next day, they discuss how to stop Oza from taking control of the world's energy infrastructure. Emma announces their plan to go around town, taking down Uza reactors, and she gives Cardenas access to her computers to aid Morris's investigation. Sadly, they have no idea that there's a tracker on the truck. Later on, Emma explains that Joe will have to treat Kamui like his wife, with care and attention. Anyway, all of his efforts to get her off the mission fails, and Cardenas pops in with a huge serving of food. They then share it as one twisted family. The Secretary of Power calls Joseph and gives him a hard time. He gets so pissed that Dilly has to calm him down. They then try to teach Big D, but he ends the call at his barber's shop, seeing as he put a tracker on Emma's truck. Joseph then crosses paths with Zai as he heads to check on his Gusoku gear. Emma and Cardena hack into Uza's operational data server to source information about their involvement in secretly settling international disputes with weapons. Just then, Big D arrives at the scene, but they don't stop hacking. Joe then pops out to face Big D, but they get interrupted when Uza mercenaries begin to shoot up Emma's car. She uses her other bots to guide, and Morris shows up with a rocket launcher, his not-so-little friend. Things get heated, so Emma leaves the hacking to Cardenas and assists Morris. Joe and Big D seem to be on equal footing as they clash weapons, so Emma shoots up a fire extinguisher and defeats 3 operatives under the cover. A sniper gets Morris soon enough, but thankfully, it only hits his bulletproof vest. After this, he goes on a shooting spree while he and Emma cover each other. Joe and Big D continue their heated battle until our boy spins his sword and kicks it into Big D's chest, shattering his suit and defeating him. Emma tries talking to Big D, only for Joseph to remotely detonate his suit. Big D protects Joe with one of his centipedes, while Emma quickly protects Morris and Cardenas. The explosion goes off and decimates Big D. It then leaves Emma brutally injured and close to death. They hurtle around her in tears, but Emma shows them her real face and spends her last moments happy. Zai stares at his finished suit, while Joe and Morris stare at what is now Emma's grave. They discuss the info they got on Uza's corruption and how they can't let Emma's sacrifice go to waste. Unfortunately, Cardenas later reveals that Emma encoded the information to make sure it stays safe. They see on the news that Joseph has declared them to be the terrorists that attacked his power plants, and in turn, he presents this false info to the secretary. Maybe Joseph should have been a photographer with the way he frames people. Moving on, after the call, Dilly informs him of the stolen data, and it infuriates Joseph some more. Meanwhile, Cardenas and Morris lament over having nowhere to leak information because all the media outlets are in Uza's pocket. Morris then has a plan, but when he opens the truck, a crow flies in with a challenge from Zai. Joe remembers a time when Zai almost killed a fellow ninja because he surrendered. Mari then put them up to fight each other, after which it ended in a draw. Zai went on to train some more, and finally he, Mari, and Joe were sent on the mission that would make them ninja. They had finished the mission, but got held back by reinforcements. Zai then carelessly faced them and got the beatdown of his life. He surrendered because he concluded that he was weak, only for Mari and Joe to back him up. Afterwards, they made him understand that they could achieve great things by working together. Unfortunately, the day came when Joe and Mari had to leave, and Zai promised that he would be the one to hunt them. True to his words, Joe arrives at their old hiding spot in full armor, and so does Zai as they prepare to face off. Morris pays his old partner turned boss a visit and asks him to give Emma's information to any upstanding FBI agent that didn't take Uza's bribe. Instead, his boss reports that Morris has been found, leaving him no choice but to flee. Meanwhile, Zai and Joe begin to clash swords, and this goes on until both ninja rid each other of their swords. They throw punches simultaneously, and the clash results in their suits falling off. Zai and Joe begin to trade punches in what seems like an evenly matched battle. Zai then switches things up by activating his secret art called the Thunderclap and triples the speed of his attacks. After knocking Joe around, our boy activates his own secret art called Serenity. This slows down everything and heightens his senses enough to land a hefty blow. Zai takes to swords, but Joe simply shatters both the sword and Zai's mask, revealing the scar left by the organization after he let Joe and Mari escape. The fight continues until Zai stabs Joe's shoulder. He pushes through the pain and punches Zai with so much force that he slams the wall in the distance and passes out soon enough. Cardenas continues to try in vain to access Emma's information. Just then, Morris returns and gets filled in on how Cardenas couldn't bypass her biometric signature. He then remembers that she touched his kid's drawing, so her fingerprints will be on it. On the flip, Joseph calls Yamaji and plays a recording where he admits that he's cutting ties with Uza since he has gathered enough data on the Gusoku gear to make his own. Joseph's operatives then e-kill their way to Yamaji's chambers and fire sporadically at it. Unfortunately, Yamaji rigged the whole place to blow and calls Joseph afterwards to remind him that he remembers all the data. He and his shinobi raid Uza headquarters as they slaughter their way to the top. Meanwhile, the cops catch up to Cardenas and Morris. Joseph comes face to face with multiple assassins as he tries escaping through the elevator. He shoots Dilly in the process, but she carries him down to the lab nonetheless. Morris gets apprehended by the cops. leaving Cardenas to access the files on a totally different vehicle. It's a success because of the fingerprint, and Cardenas celebrates by kissing total strangers. At the lab, Dilly and Joseph fight off attacking Shinobi until Yamaji and his men arrive. Despite her boss's orders, she throws Joseph through the window and he gets whisked off by a helicopter. Meanwhile, Zai comes to and remembers when Yamaji asked him to kill Ren, Mari, and Joe. Memories of his time with Mari then flash back, and this makes him so frustrated that he punches the ground. Dr. Kagari approaches Joe in his hideout and reveals the techniques they used in battle. Joe wonders how he knew, only for Kagari to transform into the chief of their clan. Dilly easily takes down the other ninja with her brute strength, leaving only Yamaji. She then puts on her Gusoku gear, and their battle shakes the building. She remembers all of Joseph's plans and continues to fight Yamaji because she now believes Joseph can change the world. In turn, Yamaji comes forth in the perfected Gusoku gear called Mikado, and their clash shatters the Oza city barrier. She gets flung from the skyscraper, and Yamaji stabs her multiple times after the fact. Kagari sits Joe down as he narrates how he discovered that their organization was stagnant, and how he disguised himself to search the hearts of Mari, Zai, and himself. Mari had told him that she would follow her heart regardless, and their group struck a chord in the chief. Unfortunately, Yamaji concluded that he was filled with doubt, so he cut off his head. This makes Joe question how he's still alive, and the chief explains that he survived by giving up his ninja abilities. He did mention that he's like a cat with 9 lives, though. On the other hand, Morris calls his boss into his interrogation room and asks him one more time to join him to serve Joseph Evans justice. Unfortunately, his boss doesn't play along and gets news about classified Uza data being leaked onto the web, alongside a list of secret accounts of dignitaries with Uza Bank. Morris had Cardenas block out the names of FBI agents and the Secretary of Defense, just so he can blackmail them into helping him serve justice. Baller move, if you ask me. His boss then turns off the camera, and they beat the shit out of each other like real men. Joseph watches on the news that the FBI served him an arrest warrant. In turn, he goes on air and threatens to blow up the reactors alongside a 100-kilometer radius. The Secretary of Defense panics because the Air Force lost track of him, but she gets interrupted by ninja in Gusoku gear. In fact, Yamaji sends some to the White House and others to the Pentagon, ushering a new world belonging to Shinobi. Meanwhile, Joe straps Kamui to his bike and makes his way to Uza City.
Hey, Jason. Have any luck?
I found Joseph's hiding place, the Auza Palace Hotel. You were right on the money.
Cardenas reveals Joseph's hiding place and adds that he will escape via Neil Avenue Station. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Defense talks with Yamaji about his plan and discovers that he wants to bring peace to the world by first becoming the world power. He claims to have tabs on Joseph, but will move on him after defeating Joe. In turn, multiple ninja in Gusoku gear attack our boy at once. Cardenas manages to track Joseph's movements as he steps onto a plane, giving Morris a chance to crash it using his car. The chase continues on foot until Joseph tries to detonate the reactor. Luckily, Cardenas successfully jammed the signal to Joseph's watch controller. He then reveals he's the one that killed Emma, so Morris pummels his face and points a gun at him. At that moment, Joe comes face to face with Yamaji as they fight over their difference in vision. They clash swords and display expertise in the way of the shinobi. This goes on until our boy's sword comes inches away from Yamaji. Suddenly, Zai pops up to attack Joe and it becomes a 2-on-1 battle. They knock our boy around like he's a cheap volleyball, so he activates his secret art. Unfortunately, so does Yamaji. His secret art messes with Joe's mind and buries him in a montage of his memories up until he sees his wife and son bloody and hanging. In reality, Yamaji holds Joe up and is about to behead him. Zai then interrupts this as he stabs Yamaji and sadly loses his arm in the process. He burrows a hole to a much bigger reactor and Zai falls into it alongside Joe. Yamaji then powers up so much that he begins to glow. After this, he knocks Joe around some more and pins him to the ground with 2 swords. He then begins to activate all the Uza reactors worldwide, leaving Joe to fall into a trance where Mari encourages him.
Remember my ninja philosophy. Be as cold as fire and as hot as ice.
He gets on his feet and peels off his armor as he copies Zai's secret art, Thunderclap. With unimaginable speed, he stabs Yamaji, distracting him from his mission. He shoots bolts of lightning at our boy, but he just keeps dodging and stabbing the shit out of Yamaji. This makes him gather a boatload of lightning, but as he shoots it towards Joe, our boy barrels through it fast enough to deflect it out of the underground cave and put an end to Yamaji. The reactors power down after this, and Yamaji falls to the ground. Meanwhile, Joseph gets apprehended by the police, and Morris overhears that all the government houses under siege have been set free. Zai, who's now one-handed, decides to take his life, but Joe catches his sword yet again. He later dumps his gear into the river and rides into the horizon.